going to be co-moderating the panel discussion tonight, and welcome here. We know we have a lot of new friends joining us today from all over the place. We have schools from across Canada that are going to be watching this tomorrow. We have, once it's posted live on demand, video on demand, we have schools and people from, I think we saw Chicago is going to be showing up tonight. We have folks all the way from Mexico that are going to be having this translated, which is so exciting. And really all the hype about this conversation really comes down to the fact that this is an important conversation and something that we need to be talking about. So without further ado, I'm going to kick things off the way we always do here at Esport Canada. This is our land acknowledgement. So for those of you who are maybe not from Canada, this is something that we do as part of our work in truth and reconciliation. And so Esport Canada brings together a community of gamers on traditional Indigenous land. While we meet on a virtual platform, we respect the treaties made on this land and acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and present. We dedicate ourselves to authentic alliances with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and cooperation. And with that, I'm going to jump into our call now and get things started. So hang on just a second here as I jump into our call and get this part
back in like 2 seconds because I need to not die.
Definitely don't do that. Don't die. All right, hang on. Okay, let's get this live scene going. And welcome here, everybody. Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
I'm doing good. How are
Everybody's
you?
doing well? Yeah, I'm good. I'm so excited to have this conversation with everybody. And so I guess while we're waiting for Maria to come back, I'm just going to whip around the room and share some introductions about who everybody is so that our viewers have an idea of who we're talking to. So I guess I'll start by just briefly introducing myself. My name, as I said, is Melissa Burns. I'm a teacher here in Manitoba, which is, if you're from the States, just like 45 minutes north of the North Dakota border, and it is still very cold and very snowy. I am the founder and president of Esport Canada, and very excited to be sharing this conversation with all these incredible women tonight. Just joining us now is my co-moderator, Maria. It's Nina Starr online, and she's from Toronto. She's the Senior Program Management Analyst at AMD, leading programs and events throughout Canada and beyond. She has a vast and expansive background in the esports industry and is on this year's Canadian Video Game Awards Selection Committee. So welcome, Maria. And over a few down is Jamie. Jamie is known as Karma Online. She is an accomplished professional Rocket League player, streamer, and shoutcaster. She has also previously played at the professional level in Hearthstone and Call of Duty, and is an absolute legend in terms of females leading the way in the professional scene. Where is she? Oh, in the top left corner, we have Bethany. And can you help me? How do I say your screen name?
Indieberg.
Okay, Indieberg. I figured that's what it was.
Put together.
Yep. Okay, perfect. I kind of figured that's what it was, but I wasn't sure. She lives in LA, beautiful LA, much less snowy than where I currently am.
Yeah.
And she acts as the head of coaching for Cloud9's training grounds, the collegiate coordinator for Game Hers, and the director of coaching for the North American Scholastic Esports Federation. Just directly below me is Kayla, Kale for Kale. She is a graduate student in kinesiology at the University of Waterloo here in Canada, where she is merging her interests in academics and esports by studying esports injuries and prevention. She got her start in broadcast coordination at her university and found a passion for production, now acting as productions director at Atlanta Premier in Rocket League, League of Legends, and most notably Valorant. Um, Down in the bottom corner is Sarah Valor RL. She's a recent college graduate with a Bachelor of Science degree in health who found a love for streaming during the pandemic. She now works full time as a Rocket League streamer and gamer. Right beside me, I feel like the Brady Bunch right now doing this. Like, uh, that's a reference some of you might be too young to know. Because you're not all old like me. Beside me is Alyssa, who is horrific online. She's in her second year of study at University of Waterloo, majoring in science and business. She is a shoutcaster and events manager for Waterloo Esports and the community manager for Fair Chance Gaming. She's a lifelong gamer whose current go-to title is League of Legends. And in the bottom corner is Nikki Justine, known as Nikki Justine online, and seems to have lots of friends online, which is super exciting. Is also a recent college graduate who found her way into streaming full-time during the pandemic as well. She found a passion for cultivating a welcoming, positive, and hyped community built on their shared passion for Rocket League. So today we are here to talk about women in gaming, and the people that we're talking to are not only women like us who are kind of in the thick of it, but also looking at this from the educational perspective, where there are a lot of young girls that are going to be watching this. And I know even with my own class, as I've been having these discussions and like reading through your bios with them and watching different like streams and stuff, they had so many great questions. And I can't wait to share some of those with you and some of the ones that were sent in online over the past few weeks. But to get us started off, we obviously know that there are some very significant gender gaps within the esports industry, and it stems not even just from the way that it is within the industry, but even the games themselves. I was looking through some of the statistics, and like, while a lot of games now are offering choice of who your protagonist is, the character that you're going to play, in this past year, this was a statistic from 2021, of games where you had a single protagonist, only 18% were female, which is really, really low. And then when you get past the games and into the industry itself, we're seeing lots of women are playing games, but the research is showing that very few women actually identify themselves as a gamer. And I'm not sure what's causing that disconnect between women playing games and engaging in games regularly and like all the time, and not actually considering themselves, not taking that identity as a gamer themselves. And I think the statistic I had seen that was something like, what was it? It was like 57% of women, like 18 to 35, game regularly, but only like 9% of them actually identify themselves as a gamer, which is absolutely bizarre. And then when we actually look at the esports industry, obviously there are significantly fewer women in those roles, whether it's production or playing or anything like that. Executive roles, we're seeing, and upper management roles, we see 14% are women. And once you actually get into pro play, it drops as low as 5%. Why is that? Why are those numbers so significant? That's a question open for discussion.
I mean, I guess I could kind of start to speak to that, I guess. I personally feel like gamer probably has a negative connotation to it, especially now, or especially before. Now it's kind of getting into like a cool thing to do, or a more popular thing to do, but I think especially through the tens and like or early 2000s, it was really negatively looked upon. Growing up for me, I played a lot of games with my friends in the neighborhood. And even my own family, my dad in particular was not that he's a great father. Let me preface this by saying, but he was always like, games are for boys. Video games are for that type of area. And it's funny because I was an athlete growing up, which you could make the same argument, I guess, in ways. But yeah, it seems like gamer or identifying as a gamer has a pretty negative connotation to it, and I think that. As you guys will probably discuss, there are a bunch of reasons as to why all this stuff is negative or less impactful towards women.
I'm in here. I think sorry whoever I'm sorry.
No, jump in.
I would just say the default male kind of environment we're all already in, I think plays a part, because it was built around like for boys, for men, and now we're all trying to kind of weave our way into that where it like the women's experience is niche now. It's not part of the whole experience. It's like this subset that we have to cater to. It's like we're not into the fold at the larger community because it was built around men and them being athletes at a higher level. I'd also say, like, my family was musicians growing up, and I would be scared to call myself a musician because I think a musician is up here. And I think if we start, expanding what we call a gamer, it's going to be more inviting because I think right now people feel like, well, I'm not qualified to be a gamer. I'm not top 500 in anything. I just play for fun. But you're still a gamer. I think maybe identifying like women, we often think we have to be extremely qualified to do everything that we do because we're taught that. But that's just not the case. Like you can be a gamer and play any game that you want, and we are. We're just not also represented in these spaces, which I'm sure we'll get to too. But I think the default male has kind of blocked in a lot for us now that we're trying to kind of be seen in these spaces.
I guess to speak to that as well, I think that generally also as a female in like the gaming space, a lot of males generally also look down on female gamers. Like it's a very common trend when you run into someone and they happen to find out that you're a girl or something. They tend to speak down on you and they like try to question like, do you actually play games or do you actually enjoy these things? And it's like a very common thing, a common trend across a lot of more male dominated like hobbies and interests, even stuff like, for example, I don't know, Star Wars or Star Trek, Dungeons and Dragons. That's very male dominated, and a lot of girls feel like that they can't enjoy the space without feeling like someone is going to like come after them for enjoying something that like something like gaming. And as a result, a lot of them don't want to identify themselves as gamers, generally also as to like protect themselves from a lot of online harassment, stuff like that.
Yeah, going off of that, I definitely think that most of us, if not all of us in here, has probably kind of experienced that sort of, toxic sort of end of where guys come in, find out you're a girl, kind of like what you were talking about, and they kind of either be inappropriate towards you or they talk down on you. And there's a lot of people that kind of think that, like, oh, just because you're a girl, you're probably not as good either. So there's that huge thing where they're like, oh, there's a girl on my team. Oh no. And they start like talking badly or like trying to get you out of the game or anything that they can do to just like kind of bother you. So I feel like a lot of people might not identify as kind of like a gamer in that sense because they feel like they're not really welcomed into it and they're kind of like on defense rather than wanting to actually feel like they're a part of what they're doing.
I could second that because one of my favorite games for years, obviously I play Rocket League now, but beforehand I used to like playing shooters and I like to, go in voice chat and communicate with my teammates because you should be able to communicate with your teammates. But every single time I feel like I would use voice chat and talk, I would just get, oh, there's a girl on my team, like exactly like that. So I would just start to mute my mic or just not even use a headset at all and just play with no comms, which is just so miserable for a game that requires teamwork. So, and I remember since then, like I have not played that game because you need communication. And if like every other game, you're just getting someone who is just like, oh, you're a girl, and then they'll just mock you the entire game. It's just not fun anymore. So
yeah, I could definitely second that. It took me probably a year of playing Valorant. So, like, growing up, I played Call of Duty, and I would never talk in comms. I would only ever communicate with my friends because I was too afraid to talk to, like, who was on my team. And then once I started to play Valorant, it took me probably a year to feel comfortable enough to solo queue and communicate. Recently, I feel like, or there was probably like 5 month span where it felt like the community was getting better. Now I don't have a lot of time to play, and I don't even want to play because it feels like every single time I get into a game, I'm guaranteed to have at least one really negative person on the team. And it's like, okay, sure, like sometimes if it's just one person, it's okay. And like you get stronger and you can like keep playing and communicate. but sometimes it doesn't even feel like the other 3 people on the team are trying to back you up or like help you out, which makes it a little bit more difficult to even want to try to keep playing. And then I don't know, that might even start to steer like girls away from even wanting to play. Like maybe they find these games that they really like and they're like, oh, but like I don't know, I only play it a few hours a week. I wouldn't really consider myself a gamer. And then so having like that lack of welcoming aspect, and then also maybe even considering a gamer as somebody who plays excessively, like that might be a stereotype as well, where people don't want to identify as being like a gamer.
Yeah. And I like drawing on something that Bethany was kind of talking about at the beginning, it is a systemic problem because of the way that the industry was built, the way it was founded. We are trying to make a space for ourselves where we didn't exist before, where we didn't necessarily belong. It wasn't built with us in mind. And that's really when you look at systemic issues, that's really what it is. And so when we're looking at that and the culture of gaming and even the language that's used in games, like in terms of like those comms and when you're not even just with your teammates, but just the reactions and the vocabulary that's used in those reactions and how that in itself can be really derogatory towards women and minorities and racial minorities. Do you want to kind of add on that, Maria?
Well, yeah, I definitely agree. I think like the root of it is just like the foundation of what it is built on, right? And like I think the space definitely needs more allies to be a little bit more inclusive to different types of people, not just women, but people of color. Um, and we have such a great like lineup of panelists here who kind of work in different areas of competitive spaces, streaming, education spaces, and I would really love to hear from all of you. In terms of the competitive space, like, what are your thoughts on like why women aren't competing or working in this industry in comparison to men? Like Melissa brought up great statistics; they're so low. It definitely could improve, but on your thoughts of the current status now, why do you think that's the case?
I can start off with that. Um, in like a competitive environment, I haven't worked behind the scenes on anything apart from being a broadcaster, or an analyst or a desk host or something. I've never been the producing line or anything behind the camera like that, so I can't really speak to that end. But at least for me competitively, you're almost jumping into a tank of sharks in like any competitive environment. But the fact that like when you jump in, this is a weird analogy, but I'm just gonna go with it. It's almost like you're not a shark and everybody else knows, especially at the really high level. Um, I have had a lot of problems socially, just getting along with. Like it's weird because growing up, I had a ton of guy friends. Growing up in school, playing sports, I would play sports with guys all the time. So being around that environment, maybe when I was younger, helped me when I jumped into like Call of Duty lobbies back in the day, or like Valorant today is almost just as bad. Um, Rocket League is a game I like because specifically there were no comms. So I didn't really have to worry about that until I got really good and people knew my name, and then they found out that I was a girl. Or I guess that's partially not true, because I did stream a little bit earlier, but anyway, socially it was really difficult because a lot of the time my mindset has always been like you have to be so good that people can't ignore you. And I've approached that with almost everything in my life, but specifically competition because I've been around guys my whole life, and if you are 10%, 20% better than their best friends that they hang out with in Discord all the time, and they're talking about girls in that Discord all the time. I've been in Discords with people and I just get kicked from it, even though they all like me and hang around with me. They feel like it's really awkward to just be a bro or whatever when I'm there, for whatever reason. And I don't really think that that's going to stop. But I feel like there is that social barrier that's really difficult to navigate around. Because, like I said, I think you have to be like substantially better than their option in order to be the one chosen. Because if it's between you and, even though you're their friend and you're really good, and another guy, they're usually going to pick the guy for a bunch of reasons, social reasons, but also, and I don't know if this is a reason or ever confirmed, but having a girl on your team, she gets a lot of attention. Specifically me, like I would get asked to do every single interview for my team, and I would have stories about what it's like being the only girl and all that stuff, and I do want to run with that and support that, but it's really hard to not ostracize yourself in like an environment where it's you're the only one, or one of the few, I should say.
Yeah, kind of going off of that, I think the two of us have had similar experiences in that sense where I think where the root of the problem is we aren't really getting that sort of like welcoming or encouragement early on to get to the point of like being higher up and into the like the competitive scene where we are alike is the fact that I started gaming and got welcomed in by like my younger classmates that were in like that sort of group that played video games. And I got really into Call of Duty. That was what I was kind of first getting into gaming in. And I was actually welcomed and encouraged to play with them. And they were all like, oh, yeah, come play. They thought it was cool that I got to join or cool that I played video games when none of the other girls in my class did. So I think having that sort of support is really important early on to get into just gaming in general, let alone like continue even higher and higher up into the like competitive field where if you're not given that sort of support or feeling that kind of like welcoming sense of like safety in a way that makes you feel like you can actually enjoy the game and be safe playing the game instead of saying like playing competitively and everything else like that where there is that toxic atmosphere. If you're not kind of like welcomed into it early on, it feels like a lot of people are kind of like turned away from it and don't continue on to even growing higher and higher up.
I'd say that it's not a total loss either. So we're not totally hopeless. I know we all get like the brunt of it. I guess like all of us are on the front line in some way. But Val White for Cloud9, Jinji has their team. There are teams of women that are thriving and they're doing an amazing job. And they're going to make it to the main stages. I have hope for that because they're proving themselves very quietly and humbly. They're doing good work and it's just going to pay off for them. Like some of them are undefeated teams in their divisions and you just can't deny that. Like at some point, you've got to face up and say, this team's ready for a main stage. I would say though, from someone that has worked on the back end of some pro orgs, that gatekeeping is a big part of it. Gatekeeping of the staff that has been there for years, and sometimes just better networks. Men tend to have, because they've been more established in the space, like referrals. So who are you going to go with sometimes? And it does depend on someone who's on the back end making those decisions. And oftentimes, again, it's just default male. This person has referrals. This person's well connected. They have a huge following. We need this person. And a woman who may be qualified but has none of that just doesn't add up sometimes. And so it's like we're already behind. I think someone mentioned this already too. So it's like we're playing catch up no matter what. So I think like for me, training and development is really important. Like getting women who trained and developed early to be like seen and spotlighted. There are websites now where you can go look up who's Karma and her, like how do I, get an interview with her? There's places now on the internet, at least, where you can source players, call them into tournaments. They're there. I think it's just a matter of who's coming to the table. Sometimes the orgs aren't looking for them. You got to like come to them. And, women, I think in general, like tend to just like, here's what I have and this is it. And men are much more aggressive. They're like at the table. Can I get an internship? Can I be here? I've worked for this company for 10 years. Can I now play or be a manager? Like they just work themselves in and they stay there. And all the while they're gatekeeping, maybe not even intentionally, but it is because it just perpetuates more men and more men and more men. And their friends are often the people that get hired. They're not these new people on the scene that are like, I'm qualified, I'm ready. It's, I don't know who you are, so good luck, is often the harsh reality of like what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And something that's really interesting about that is that while many of us are very much like in the thick of it, we know that with almost anything in society, one of the major ways to address issues is through education. And so now that we're seeing esports programs coming to schools and actually being invited and part of the learning process, what I've noticed in the classroom is that while I have girls that are gaming every single lunch hour, like they're on their phones as soon as that bell goes and they're playing as soon as we have like tryouts for teams, they're nowhere to be found. And so I know that they're gaming, but they're not competing. And why do you think that is? Why do you think, and how do we change the way that we are doing it in education and in those camp environments and in all those different spaces? How do we make competition and that skill development more appealing, make the space safer for girls to put themselves out there? What do you think we can do as educators to kind of help that?
I guess I can speak to this a little bit. I'm not like I'm not a teacher or anything, but I do work on the education side of esports. So I think generally girls will find that their experience in the game themselves can be a little bit more negative, and that can often translate to what they think about competitive gaming and competitive teams. So I think as educators, we should be working towards educating our male students and working with them and having them understand what it's like to be in a marginalized group, especially in something like gaming. And I think as educators, we should maybe some girls aren't as comfortable going up and being like, yeah, I'm signing up for this publicly. I like the whole class will know about this. Sometimes it's hard, especially since girls are often ostracized online for stuff like that. So I think as educators we can work on maybe talking to students that are in the minority groups about signing up and maybe working together with them and having them become more comfortable. Sorry, it's kind of kind of a rant. I'm not sure. My train of thought kind of gets lost sometimes, but it's just something along the lines of having educators reach out to these students who they know are interested but are often scared of coming out publicly.
Yeah, and I think too that like I know that I've had more success when I've run girls only programs. And for whatever reason, at least with junior high girls, they seem to find that a much more safe environment and they're more willing to come and try and not be afraid of failure. And so I've seen a lot of growth and development in those kinds of situations. But I'm wondering, are there any drawbacks to having a girls only environment? Should it be sometimes girls only and sometimes co-ed? And in those spaces, how do we help support the conversation for our male allies in training them in what they should be seeing and how they can call people in when they're noticing toxicity?
I would like to kind of speak, I guess, on the like starting with an all girls only club. So for me personally, I went to an all girls high school and I tried a bunch of different clubs. Like I was on robotics and a bunch of these different things. And once I got to university, I was even like, even though we did really well in robotics in high school as an all girls team, when I got to university, I didn't even want to try to do co ed because I was like, I felt like I wasn't going to be at that level. But even just having the opportunity to have these all girl clubs or like sessions where the girls have a chance to get a taste of that environment, maybe, so that when they do potentially apply or try out for these competitive co-ed teams, they have an idea of what to expect in the environment, so it's not a completely new, overwhelming thing. That might be a good way to at least so that they have some idea of what to expect instead of just jumping into it and being completely lost in what is going to happen. So that might be a good way to start. Um, Personally, like I'm in a lot of like female only or like non-male identifying communities with like Galorants and all of the Valorant communities. And I found that that is how I got to my level of production because I was in these environments where I wasn't afraid of being looked down on by like male counterparts. So I think that providing these like female only or girl only clubs is a good start, but it I can see where it limits you because then we get like the subset of where we're at kind of I guess I know the Valorant scene very well, but it's like getting these all female teams or like female identifying teams to get into an open qualifier, for example, for like Valorant, is very hard because they don't want to try to compete against the males because they're like, it's like almost like fear of not being able to compare or compete. Yeah, I don't know. I think I kind of went a little too far off there, but I think that's a good like little starter idea.
Wait, sorry, to bounce off of that, I agree. I think that when an all-female team fails, they fail hard because the community will continue to look down on them. Because so I think one good example of this was for League of Legends specifically, there's Team Siren. They were an all-female team. They were not at the skill level of LCS teams, yet they did go and they did try to compete. For those qualifiers, and they lost, and they lost very hard, and as a result the entire community went and started basically shaming them and saying like, oh my gosh, girls are so bad at games. And so I think it's hard as an all-female team, because if you lose, then you lose essentially as the face of women in competitive gaming. It's a really hard decision to go and compete at higher levels because of what's expected of you as a competitive female gamer.
Yeah, I felt like that a lot when I played. I feel like my mistakes are magnified, even though I was on a team. Anything I did in particular. So for those of you who don't know, I've never played in an all women's environment. I've always played with or against boys. I've never had a woman on my team or anything like that. I've only played with or against boys. In Hearthstone, I was by myself. In Call of Duty, it's you and 4 other people. I had 4 other guys on my team. And then Rocket League, it was me, 2 other guys, and a coach. So I've always been with all men. And I felt like in the public eye, all the attention was brought to like what I was doing. If I was on Twitch stream, even though it was the whole team was on the screen, it was always conversation about me. Or if I went into a game, made mistakes, even though it wasn't the biggest mistake, or even if it was the biggest mistake, or even if I didn't do anything, I would get blamed. At least in the public eye, Reddit, Twitch chat, like all those things that when you're a gamer or in a professional environment, and if you are in like an uncomfortable situation, it feels like the entire world is crashing down on you when those sort of situations happen. Like, even though it's just social media and it's just words, it's really mentally exhausting, and really takes a toll on your mental health to constantly just see the barrage of comments, indicators, and stuff that just are criticizing you at a really high degree, different degree that they criticize other people. And I noticed about specifically a lot when I was playing. So I kind of am losing track of where I'm going with this, but I just wanted to bounce off of what you said and just kind of give an idea of what it's like. And I understand why women are afraid to compete and face that type of criticism. It's really scary. But at the same time, I think that the all-women's environment is really good to get everybody comfortable in that competing, maybe criticism environment with people and teammates who are equal to you, so that you don't face that type of discrimination or ostracism. And I think that it's on the organizations, like TSM, Dignitas, all those teams that are Cloud9 that have those women's teams, to try and the companies like Riot, Psyonix, Epic, to kind of bridge the gap from top-level competitive women's environment into entering open qualifiers and competing with everybody else.
Yeah, I think to kind of like bring it back towards trying to get like the younger girls that are of these like kind of middle school to junior high kind of ages into gaming to begin with. I definitely think that an all-girls team could be a good start, because they might feel more encouraged to begin or kind of get their foot in the door, so to speak, in order to feel more comfortable doing so. But I do think ultimately, if they are like going to if we are, what am I trying to say here? If we're ultimately trying to get girls into gaming, like beyond just say like for school or like their school teams or within their classes or casually with their classmates, I definitely think it's important that we need to start with the boys because like I said, if I didn't have that group of guy friends that kind of welcomed me in and encouraged me to play, I might not have continued. Especially when you're talking about online gaming and all that kind of stuff, there's not enough, like, granted, not all guys are this way, not all guys are toxic to girl gamers or anything like that. There's plenty of really good ones out there that I've become great friends with. But I definitely think there is enough guys that are like, oh, I'm not like that. I don't talk to girls like that, but they're still listening to it and they don't say anything either. So I definitely think that would be a good place to start is to focus on the boys of this like young school age who might either be the ones causing the toxicity or asking for girls' Snapchats and Instagrams or saying whatever they want to say to girls online that discourage them from continuing, and be more, I guess, focus on making sure they know that if somebody is the one that's saying it and they're even just in the lobby or in the game with them, to either speak out against it, because ultimately, from what I can tell, a lot of the guys are saying that maybe they won't be saying it to their girlfriends or their moms or their best friends that they have in real life, but online they'll be much more inclined to say it just to get a laugh out of their guy friends that are sitting in the lobby with them. So I definitely think it's really important to focus on the guys, make sure that they know that, like, if this stuff is happening, if they're in an online game and they hear it happening, to at least say something or like defend the girl so that she can feel a little bit more safe or a little bit more supported rather than ganged up on every time she's in a game, even if it's not the guy that's saying the words directly.
Love that. I mean, these are really good, different types of perspectives from, streaming, competing. And to your point, Melissa, you said that the girls that you teach, like, they're so much more comfortable starting off with, all girls teams. I think that's a great start. But I do think having co-ed teams is very important as well because I think to create change, you have to have allies on your side. There's actually a little comment here from Cubic Classroom who talked about the importance of social emotional learning. That's a big global competency, I would say, in the education space. And putting, these students into these competitive like roles and teams, like starting at the young age, they learn like they learn leadership, communication, and I think speaking on allyship, I just wanted to get your thoughts. What can male allies do to support females and minorities in the gaming space?
I think normalizing women is just a good start. There are like Val White VODs. Use those with your kids. Like there's no reason that you can't use a pro woman as an example. Like use more of that. They use TSN, they use Cloud9, anything else with their kids. But these women they're better. They're better than high school. They're better than middle school. You can learn from them. So normalize the things that they're doing. Bring them into the classroom. Talk about women athletes like you would talk about men athletes that are performing well. You want to be like Striker? Well, what about Karma? Like, why can't we bring in women that are doing amazing things and create models for them? There's no reason. And then also, like, anytime all of some group is just playing with each other, whether it be all men or all women, we're limited. When we all play together, we're challenged more because Karma's better at some things than I am. And this other teammate that is a different gender than me also has strengths that I can learn from. And when we box ourselves in, then we're only going to plateau. So I plateau based on the 5 people I play with. It's not enough. I need to play with more people. I need to build more strengths, and I need to learn from people of different backgrounds, period. That's for guys and for women. And so just play together. Have them play together more. The spaces, totally valid. Have space for women and girls to come in and feel welcome. But at the end of the day, there's no reason to dissect those groups into 2 different. They need to learn from one another. Men need to be playing with women, just like women need to be included. But that's not going to happen unless you give that opportunity. And then also monitor and make sure it's safe. It's not one of those environments where you just think everything is fine. You can just walk away as a teacher. I think you stay there and you just make sure in good conscience that it's going the way you want. Things are being talked about the way you want. Chime in when things go wrong. NASA does club charters, which is a big piece. So before you start a club, anybody new that comes in, there should be some sort of standard we're all like gathered around. And that's in the pro scene too. If you don't fit in, you get cut. if you don't like socially behave and get along with your teammates, if you're acting out, whether you be a coach or a great player, you get dropped. So form that in high schools. Have a standard where when you come in the door, this is what it means to be part of the club.
Thank you so much, Bethany. We talked a lot about, your current experiences from the past and all that. Where I met Melissa, we worked on like a girls' education esports program, which was really exciting. And Melissa, I admire you so much. You do so much for within the like as a teacher. I would have loved to have you as a teacher, honestly. But I think something interesting that would be kind of nice to hear is, if you were, say, 10 years old, 12 years old, what kind of programs or things would you like to see in school? Or maybe what would you like to see activated to kind of make you feel more comfortable competing or playing with your peers?
I guess just for language in general, this would just be a short thing. Just generally, a lot of adults will brush off um what boys are doing as like boys will be boys, even if they're being extremely rude to someone, and they're like, oh, they just like you, or it's just silly things like that that teachers really need to um drive students away from doing that sort of thing, and instead of brushing off this behavior, um addressing it and addressing why are you saying these things and why are you doing these things, like it's hurtful, or it has a negative impact on someone else, right? So I think this is just a general thing. But also addressing these sorts of behavior during your youth will help to alleviate a lot of negative behaviors online in the future when these boys who are behaving as boys become adults and they continue this behavior because they think it's okay, because no one's ever told them that it's not okay, right? So I think just addressing behaviors early on in life is an important aspect of just making students and younger children, I guess, become more comfortable in their communities and in even just any space in general.
And I think that, at least for me, the one of the main reasons that I was so passionate about bringing this into schools and bring it into education was that our students are gamers. Just like I might be slightly ahead of my time in terms of my generation of identifying as a gamer later in life, but our students are all gamers. And so we're not looking at something that is just like a casual thing that some people do. Almost all of them are. And so to me, this is preparing them for real life. This is allowing them the opportunity to learn real life skills that impact their daily life and their interactions. Interactions are not just exclusively validated if they were physical. We are having community, we are having real life moments online. And so to completely ignore that or to not hone in on it in an educational space is a disservice to our students. And so something that I've personally found to be really successful with my classes and my students is looking at that male allyship and working on just identifying issues. Because a lot of times it's not necessarily that they're overtly going and doing these things, it's that because it's part of the culture, they don't even recognize it as something that is wrong or something that is hurtful or something that is derogatory. That's just the way it is. And so to at least start by educating our students in this is how we recognize what, just like we're working on like not being racist is not enough. You need to be anti-racist and what that actually means and how to actually call it out and call people in, and identifying it, learning to identify it is what we need to do in these spaces too, or at least that's the perspective that I've taken.
Mm-hmm. So we actually do have a really interesting question that came from the chat, and Melissa, this might be a fun one for you,
Yeah.
coming from a teacher's perspective, but please feel free anyone to chime in. So Sam, sorry, Themrantic, I apologize if I said that wrong. Do you think it's better / more powerful to address esports and male toxicity in elementary versus high school?
Yeah, I mean, like I'm a mother. I have two young kids myself, so I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. And Alyssa's point earlier of talking about, well, boys will be boys. Both of my children are male, and I have never once allowed that phrase to be even spoken around my children. And when that phrase is used, I immediately shut it down and I change that conversation like openly in front of the adult who made the comment towards my children. And to me, that's really, really important. And I think that the earlier that we start to talk about it, just like you have to teach social skills to a 3-year-old, like you don't point and talk about people because that makes people uncomfortable and they don't know what you're saying. And our human brains tend to think the worst about every situation. So we teach them not to point while they're talking. It's the same thing here where we start training those social skills early, not only in how we are reacting and responding to situations, but also in how we process those situations. And so, just like with a 3-year-old, you're learning about simple emotions. You're learning how to identify, I'm sad, I'm frustrated, I'm angry. We start to identify those things at an early age with our students as well. And it doesn't, I know one of the big issues in education is access to technology, and typically younger students don't have as equitable access to technology as older students do. And so then you have this really big gap in terms of skill development within tech field, where students that come from a more affluent background have those skills by the time they get to high school and get regular access to computers. And those that don't come from that sort of affluence are coming in and starting at a huge technical deficit. And so then to be trying to learn these technical skills and deal with all the social emotional skills and all these other skills is overwhelming and sets them up for failure. So I think the earlier we can start doing it, even if you don't have the access to technology, developing the skills that allow them to be successful in those spaces is really critical. And if nobody has anything to say to add to that,
That was a lot. It was really good though.
I do want to be mindful of time, so there's so much we could still talk about. So I would love to jump to some of our, I'm going to call them lightning round questions. They're just like quick burst answers from people. And these were some of the questions that were submitted by students. So these questions came in from all across Canada. I didn't see any from anywhere else, but these are students across Canada and some of the questions that they had. And unsurprising to me as an educator, they want to know about you as people. And that social story piece is so important to our students, and having that personal relationship is really key. So I think they're really going to like this. So I'll start with the first one and then we can hop around. Maria, you can get the next one. And so anybody and everybody is welcome to answer these. So the first quick question is, when was your first experience with haters online and how did it make you feel? When or what? What was your first experience with haters? How did it make you feel?
My first kind of like online experience, like I said, was in Call of Duty, which is known as being kind of like one of the more toxic kind of like areas. Granted, I've seen it in every single game possible, even Minecraft. So it's all over the place. But Call of Duty specifically, obviously I started off gaming playing on like, handhelds and all that kind of stuff. But my first time really getting online gaming was at Call of Duty World at War and then into the Black Ops series of games. And honestly, that's from the very beginning. The second I start talking and everybody kind of identifies me as like, oh, that's a girl, that's where it all kind of goes downhill. So honestly, it started off right away and it's been there ever since.
Yeah, it's really funny because I was honestly going to say my first experience online with haters was live streaming on Twitch, but then I realized back when I was on Xbox, like I was in college, uh before then, like in high school and even younger, I actually when I had like a PlayStation Live like just became a thing. I actually wasn't allowed, like my parents did not want me on it, so I never had a super young experience being online because they literally just wouldn't allow it. So one of the first times I actually done online chat was in college, which is crazy. I don't know how that happened. But it was literally in like Rainbow Six Siege, and I turned on my mic once and just got screamed at and told that I am terrible at the game, and it was not a fun experience. So that was actually the first experience with haters, just in Rainbow Six in college, which is crazy to me.
I
I
guess I
can't
can go.
think of the first one.
Go ahead,
Sorry,
Bethany. You
but
go. You go.
I mean, Overwatch for sure. Like, I was really into that game when it came out, and I wanted to be in voice 'cause it's obviously a team game. And yeah, I remember just like getting hate on voice comms, so I would mute them so that like I could still speak and they could hear me, but I couldn't hear them. That's how I got around it because I was like, well, I'm gonna talk. I have things to say, so I don't want to hear you because you obviously don't care. But I muted all of them and got through the game and decided that's how I was gonna play the game from now on. And I did. And I did really well by myself just doing that. So there is a way around it, but it was shocking. It was shocking for sure.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of interesting that I grew up in the COD lobbies, but I also grew up with a group of friends in my neighborhood who were co-ed. My best friends growing up were males. I just always have enjoyed like sports in Boston. I got along really well with my dad. So being around guys my whole life, I was pretty used to. When I got in COD lobbies, everything was said. I was targeted sometimes. The way I dealt with it was just talk smack back. I'm sorry. I would scream and yell at all of them. I'd tell them they're all garbage or tell them they're trash, and then I would go into the game and I would destroy them. That was pretty much like my coping mechanism with dealing with hate, was just trying to get so good that after the game I was the one on top, yelling down at all of them that they're trash and garbage. And like, I would never single anyone out though, like based on like, I would never poke fun of, who they are, their gender, anything like that. It was all like to do with the game. And it was like very game specific and a defense mechanism. Like, I won, you lost. And I would keep it like about the game and stuff like that. It was a retaliation thing. I wouldn't start anything. But that was like kind of how I dealt with things. I've honestly been more oppressed or like alarmed by what I've heard recently. Starting to play Valorant has actually been like really eye-opening to me, because growing, like, all the other games I played were kind of solo, or you'd have a team around you of people I was comfortable with. But in Valorant, I would just go in and solo queue at like, I don't know, like Diamond or Plat, and every single person, if something goes wrong, they're first to criticize you because you're the one with the high voice. And it's like a blame, like deflect mechanism. That's really interesting to me, and it's really alarming when it happened. Even though I've been like, smack talked all of the years, just joining the Valorant lobbies and hearing some of the things that people say. Maybe it's coming from Rocket League, where like there's sort of, I've earned, or at least I hope I've earned some level of respect in that community because I was a pro player. And then hopping into Valorant, where like I'm not a pro player or anything like that, and just having all the hate thrown at me in these games was really alarming. And I can totally understand why everyone, like, I've played muted before, and I'm someone who is super social. I use games to make friends. I'll play with anyone who's funny or nice. I try and always make the lobbies really fun and joke around. But sometimes I get to a point where these people are so rude that even my jokes and my funny, like, charming attitude doesn't work. And it's just like, oh, okay, what do I do now? And then I just sit there muted, and it's not fun. I can understand why no one would want to play unless you're a single player, at least for me. The social aspect is like a huge part of the game. So to go in there and just get stomped out was pretty alarming. I can totally understand playing muted and getting around it, but my coping mechanism was, I wouldn't recommend it, but yeah, that's how I dealt with it over the years, was just kind of like joining the locker room attitude and giving it back. That was pretty much how I dealt with it.
I just wanted to go off of one thing that you said, Karma, is when you mentioned the high voice thing, because I remember in like COD lobbies where if I accidentally spoke because I wasn't trying to, they'd be like, "Oh, is that a squeaker?" as in like, is that like a little like a young boy? And then if they realize it's not a young boy and it's actually a girl, that's when they get mean. So it was fine if it was a young kid in your lobby, but as soon as they find out that you're a girl, that's when it always goes bad. Yeah. But usually I would just like shut down because I like, how, what are you supposed to do? Like you just sit there and you're like, oh, I'm not used to this. Like I don't know how to like talk back. This isn't my comfort zone. Yeah.
Yeah, I think at least like Kayla, I don't know how you dealt with it, but I feel like finding somebody to play with, um, and have, maybe it's just you guys in Discord. I wouldn't recommend like getting into a spitting argument back and forth with someone on Valorant. I don't really think it's gonna work. But having someone on your side or a friend that you can play with that helps you deal with comments like that, so that you're not alone in a muted environment. Because when you're alone, muted, trying to enjoy a game, and someone's trying to ruin it for you, and you don't have all the time in the world to play, I can understand why you wouldn't want to get back into that at all. But having an ally with you, I think, makes it way more enjoyable. You can like complain to your friend and like cope with like what they're saying, because I think changing the environment in which this happens is a much bigger scale than any individual can really, undertake. I think learning how to deal with it, even though it's sad, is like a lot quicker of a fixed method than to, on an individual scale of how you can deal with it.
Yep, 100%. And I think that's a good thing that we can even get any like young girls who might be watching is like find that duo who you can play with. And even if it is another girl who's willing to like stick up for themselves, like find that duo who will stick up for both of you so that you feel more comfortable in those environments.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So, going to the next lightning round question. When you were in school, did you think you would end up in esports? I actually have an answer for this. I know I'm a moderator, but but I too
allowed,
was
you're
in
allowed.
school once upon a time. Honestly, for me, no, 100% not. I was always within the gaming community in Toronto, but I think when I was in school, there wasn't really much jobs for like esports. To be honest, it was like at the time I think it was booming, but I was always at events. Zin, I know, like he's in the chat. We used to go to events back in the day, but yeah, I went to school for art. I went to school like thinking I was gonna be an art teacher. I went to school for hospitality, thinking I would open a brunch cafe, and yeah, now I work in esports. So you never know where you'll go. You really do. We'll never know where you go. But if you're really passionate and you love it, follow that passion because you really never know where it's going to go. And really, 10 years from now, there's going to be so many jobs that have never existed in the gaming space. So follow your dreams.
I guess for me, I'm a science student. I'm currently a science student. I work in educational esports. It's a little bit of a leap. I'm only my second year of university, so I'm on the younger side of the panel. So I'm like a little scared because all of you are way more experienced than me. But I graduated high school in the middle of the pandemic, and I just happened to it's like a long series of coincidences that led me to working in the industry, and that's just kind of how the esports industry is that I met the right people at the right time, and suddenly I'm brought into my new university's esports club, and I'm meeting all of these people from the esports industry, and oh my gosh, suddenly I've found a job in educational esports. So I think I definitely did not know that I was going to be working in esports at this point in my life. I graduated high school. I was like, I'm gonna go become a researcher. That's what I was planning on doing. So it's definitely a little bit of a change, but so yeah, no, I was not ready to. I was not planning on working in esports at all.
Yeah, pretty much the same over here. Absolutely not. I kind of just happened upon streaming. I had just graduated college right at the start of the pandemic. I was one of those people that had no idea what they wanted to do. Not even one slightest little bit. All I knew is, okay, my first job I ever had as a high school student was after school care, so I'm gonna go in to be a teacher. And then once I did get to college, I was like, maybe not. Let's go into this. I wanted to go more into like the sciences, so I changed my major to health science. And then I graduated. I have this degree, and I'm like, okay, now what do I do with it? Everybody's sitting at home. Nobody's leaving their house. I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. I've been playing video games since like the 4th or 5th grade. I guess I'll just sit at home and play video games all day while we're in the pandemic living at home, right? So I kind of just happened upon streaming and everything, and it's been really cool. I'm not a very in-person sociable person. I've always had kind of like social anxieties and that kind of stuff where making friends and all that kind of stuff has been pretty difficult. I didn't really have very many through college, and I mostly just stayed in my apartment or my dorm room every day and I played Rocket League. So that ended up being what I now do full time, which is just really cool. And I definitely enjoy it. I might go back to at least doing a little bit of my degree on the side eventually, but as of right now, it's what I do and what I like to do. So
For me, I didn't think that I was going to be here either. I grew up as an athlete. My dad coached me in basketball. I played every sport you could imagine. And in 4th grade or 5th grade on my graduating thing, I wrote that I want to be the first women in the NBA. So that was like my goal growing up. I don't know why. I had no idea what I was writing, but that was it. And I was supposed to go to college for basketball. I had been interested or heard interest from Maryland and UConn. I was born with a pre-existing condition, very, very rare, that has plagued, it's chronic, it is lasted my whole life. And when I turned 12 or 13, I went in to get a physical to make my high school team, and they sent me to my doctors. My doctors did a physical exam, and they told me that I could no longer play sports because I had a risk of injuring my back or my legs very badly. So I was 13. I had no idea what I was doing. I had played video games sparsely growing up. Sometimes my friends would play Super Smash Brothers or PlayStation or something. Like, I had that stuff, but I was all sports. Then I was suggested to a friend, like, hey, why don't you play this game with me? And I really found it as a huge escape method for me. Dealing with all these things at the time, I was in a lot of pain, both mentally and physically, because my dreams were shattered, and I was physically unable to do everything I wanted. So I used games as an escape. Ended up getting really, really good unintentionally, just from all the time that I'd put in. I'm a competitor at heart. I devote a lot of time to getting really good at stuff. It's just really fun for me learning all the analytical and fun sides of games. And I kind of accidentally just fell into this whole thing. I started playing these things called game battles way back in the day. If you're watching, some of you may be way too young to know what game battles are. But it was a website where you played privately against other people. I ended up becoming a top rank and got invited to a LAN event with my team. And I had no idea what a LAN event was. It was for like $2,000, and my parents said no. Absolutely not. So I wasn't allowed to go to anything like that. And I had to stream because people thought I was hacking. So I streamed with no mic, just gameplay. And my stream grew pretty good. And then I started using a webcam and a mic with Hearthstone stuff and did really well. And then of course I fell into Rocket League. And that's just kind of like how I entered the industry. I had no idea or plan of what esports was back then. It wasn't even a thing. Esports is like major within the last 5 years. The growth has been insane. But 10 years ago, it was non-existent, to be honest. There was like some COD teams like TK, Optic, FaZe. They were all YouTube video channels back then. It wasn't really like major teams with rosters, LAN events, crowds. Like, it was not. It was like a bunch of sweaty people stuffed into like an apartment that they could find for a weekend. That was pretty much what esports was back then. Makes me sound like a boomer, but it's kind of how it was.
I also did not plan on getting into esports. I found my way here, I think, just through transferable skills. I don't regret the way I got here. I studied anthropology and then lived in South America for a while. teaching English. So I ended up just teaching because I wanted to get out of the country. When I came back, the only thing I was like qualified for in my mind was social work. So I worked on a hotline for intimate partner violence or domestic violence survivors, and then also a refugee caseworker. Both those jobs were really draining, and I was looking for a way out. I was just looking for other jobs, but I wanted to put my passion for like competition. I was also a basketball player. I was coaching on the side, different women's groups, but I wanted to do something that kind of brought teaching, coaching things together. And I was always gaming. I grew up with brothers also, and just there was always consoles. I had a PC early. I was gaming on my own, but never considered it a career. I found Connected Camps. Connected Camps, they do Minecraft and Roblox, and they took a chance on me. But it was also two professors who were women at the time owned Connected Camps and brought me on and mentored me a lot. And they made me the esports program manager, which just led into a lot. I learned so much working from them. To be honest, like I think my career is owed a lot to them because of like their mentorship as professors. They were a professor of anthropology and a professor of play and learning at the time. And so I learned so much just being under management from them that I was able to just kind of like be qualified for a lot of things afterwards just from working from them. So that's how I got into Cloud9 and NASEF and GameHers, and it's just been spurring from there. Like once you get a foot in and you're qualified and people see that, then you can go a lot of places. But you don't have to start with esports. Start with whatever you like. I liked anthropology. I was interested in culture, and it worked out for me. So just do whatever you love.
And I think everybody answered. I think so. Just want to make sure. All right. So, last one to wrap things up. And in one sentence, this is going to make it really hard. In one sentence, what is one piece of advice that you'd give to young female gamers that are watching this? And we'll go just so that we have some order. Let's start at the bottom and work our way up. So, Valor.
Oh no, I'm starting. Okay. Honestly, just don't be afraid to get your foot in the game. It's very important to kind of like insert yourself in that group, in that setting, and just don't be afraid to, enjoy what you like and be open about it.
I would say don't let anyone's criticism affect you and what you want to do. I mean, for example, as a female in gaming, you're going to get comments, and it shouldn't affect kind of your drive to do what you want to do. If you want to game. If you want to have a job in esports, like go ahead and do it. Don't let anyone stop you from doing that.
I guess we'll go this way.
Yeah.
Mine would be ruthless in everything that you do. Don't let anyone stop you from doing what you love. Don't let anybody criticize you or bring you down when it comes to things you find enjoyment in. As long as it's not hurting anyone, you doing your own thing, completely fine. No one should be able to judge you for that. And that applies to everything, including esports, in my opinion.
If gaming is something that you enjoy, then keep doing it because it'll probably lead you to good places. You'll meet many amazing friends who support you and share the same things that you enjoy. And then who knows, you could be with like a really cool career down the road because you don't even know what kind of esports careers there's going to be in like even like 6 months from now.
I guess I'll go.
Okay. I wasn't sure if I was part of this.
Okay.
I'm like, am I? I don't know.
Okay, let's go Maria, and then we'll do Alyssa.
Okay.
Okay. I wasn't sure if this was like an everyone question.
Yeah, this
but...
is an everyone
okay.
question. Everybody's welcome. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, my piece of advice to young women, really, be resilient. If it's something you really love and enjoy, stay strong, don't stop, and just be persistent in continue what you love to do. Don't let anyone stop you.
Alyssa.
Okay. I guess mine will be if you truly believe that you can accomplish something, you will eventually accomplish it. It might not be tomorrow, but you will eventually.
I guess I'll throw it in too. For me, one of the things that I talk to my students about all the time is that success is a behavior. So whatever you are doing consistently is what you're going to be achieving. And so you can do a lot more than you might even think if you are doing it consistently. So keep in mind that success is a behavior, and when negative comments or anything else comes in, don't let that negativity impact your perception of yourself. That's when that whole idea of imposter syndrome can creep in, and don't let that happen. Don't let those voices in your head and the voices around you impact what you are able to do. Yell louder than the voices around you.
Wow, these are all really good. I think I'd go with, we need you. Like, we need your voice. We need your perspective. And we don't need you to fit the mold that has already been created. If you look different, if you talk different, if you game different, we need you and we want you. And this group would all welcome you into the fold. And just, if you love it, try it. If you've never tried it, ask for help too. It's okay to ask for support. But we need you just as you are. So just come as you are, and there's space for you here.
Awesome. Well, with that, we will wrap things up. Thank you so much to all of our incredible panelists. I am so incredibly grateful that you agreed to do this and be part of this and were able to share your voices. And I'm just really excited to have actually met so many of you. I feel so blessed to have you now in my circle. And a special shout out to a male ally. Nathan Coblin is an educator here in Manitoba and is actually the one who saw exactly what we were talking about, looking for that need and seeing that opportunity and calling things out. And he's the one that actually initiated this whole thing. So thank you so much, Nathan, and thank you for helping moderate the chat as well. And with that, we will call it a night. This is definitely the first of many conversations, and I'm hopeful that some of you will be back again, hopefully all of you at some point. And with that, we will call it a night. So thanks, everybody, and good night.
Thank you so much.
Bye.